So this is Barclays Life Skills about keeping safe against cybercrime. And what we want to do is just show that by the end of this module, you'll be able to identify ways to stay safe online and protect yourselves from the most common types of fraud, scams, and identity theft, and understand what your digital footprint is and why putting too much information online can increase your security risk. And also where to go for support and advice should you be worried that you've been a victim of fraud, scams, or identity theft. And one of the things I'd just like to add in there is that, never ever be embarrassed to contact your own bank if you've had any concerns or anything. Nobody will ever consider that you've been stupid or anything like that. They will just want to support you. Okay. So what we're going to do today is, if you haven't got a pen and paper to hand, don't worry, I just have a think about it. But we'd just like to have a think about what you can do online today. So think about, for example, shopping or reading the news. And I don't know if anybody's got any other examples they want to add to that. Nope. Okay. So just think about when you're online, for example, if you're shopping or you're on social media, have you ever thought about how much information you give out? So, and just have a think about what the different types of information you give out for shopping and stuff like that. So there's sometimes just think, are they asking for too much information? Do I need to provide this information? And just to ensure, that it is a genuine site. One of the things to look out online is to check for the padlock system, a padlock logo on the bar where you've got the address that you've typed in. And if there's or a link that you've clicked, if there's a padlock, that means it's a secure site, and it will generally start with HTTPS. So to just give you an example of fraud scams, are you aware of what they are? And whilst these figures are from 2017, it's because fraud is an ever-changing cycle and the numbers increase constantly. So where we've got these figures for 2017, they are quite significantly higher now. So fraud and scams is Britain's #1 crime. And in 2017, we had 4.7 million cyber crimes were recorded. And there was 190 billion is lost to the UK economy due to cybercrime. And that money, whilst that's 1.9 billion invested in cybersecurity by the UK government, and millions of passwords are available to hackers due to data breaches. And just one simple thing you could do is, if you go onto Google and type in common passwords, you'll be surprised to see what comes up, and just really make sure that none of your passwords are showing there. So I'm now going to hand over to Malcolm.
Yes, hi everyone. Don't think that you have to read all that. It's mainly these couple of slides coming up are very wordy to make a point, and it's the point that there's lots of different scams out there and lots of different ways fraudsters trying to get to people. So one is social engineering, which is quite a fancy term for the sort of behaviour you'll probably recognise from a fraudster, and that's where they try to trick someone into divulging information. So they can take advantage of natural tendencies. So what they'll do is, for example, they'll call someone up and tell them that some fraud or scam has been committed on their bank account, pretending to be from the bank, and try to pressure people into divulging their information really quickly. So it's preying on what we all have, a desire to protect ourselves from fraudsters, even though they're the actual ones on the end of the phone, wanting to act quickly, and other tendencies that we all have to try and get money out of people, usually by remote means. There's also website spoofing, and touched on some of the ways you can spot that. So our websites mimic legitimate sites. I can give you an example of one I saw the other day. Fraudsters are always becoming more and more sophisticated. It's not just badly worded emails where they get through to people anymore. I got a text a couple of weeks ago saying that a parcel hadn't been delivered from Royal Mail. And you go on to I followed the link, and it looked exactly like the post office website. And it even had a map on there that showed where all my nearest post offices were once you entered your postcode. But then it started asking for money for redelivery, which obviously if it's normal redelivery, Royal Mail won't do, and started asking for all sorts of personal details. Usually it's a good idea to stop one step before I did and just not click on a link if you're suspicious. But certainly if you do find yourself in a situation where there's even a hint of doubt that what you're engaging in is legitimate, then certainly don't be giving out all sorts of personal details, and always question if a website or someone on the end of a phone or a computer is asking you for details, why they're asking. Is it absolutely, if it's not absolutely essential for them to know those details, they shouldn't be asking. So always remain suspicious. There's phishing with a PH, which is an attempt by criminals to fool victims into sharing information that can allow them to access accounts and financial details. And they usually involve large-scale sort of blanket emails sent out to thousands and thousands of email addresses often at once, in the hope that just a few people will be tricked by the email and that will respond with their personal details. They quite often contain links as well, asking you to follow certain spaces. One way to look out for phishing, and we might touch on this later, is whenever you get an email that you're not sure about, the display name of the email might look legitimate. It might say it's from Barclays or Santander, or maybe your water company or another utilities company. But what you can do is if you hover over that actual name, it will reveal what the actual email address is. So the word at so-and-so. And sometimes when you do that, you will see that far from it being from Barclays or Thames Water or Northumbrian Water, it might actually just have someone's name or just some jumbled up letters. And that's always which is not an email address you're going to get from a legitimate source. So that's one way to look out for that. There's also spear phishing, which is where criminals target a specific individual or audience to get the sensitive information. It's a bit more specific rather than the blanket emails that often include many more people. And they spend much more time and effort trying to tailor these communications to make them look more legitimate. And they try and, so the idea is that it'll be lower volume, but higher success rate is what they try with these spear phishing examples. I don't know, I used an example from the post office there. I don't know if anyone on the call has recently had something along these lines. They've got any experience, obviously no pressure to share if no one wants to, but if anyone's come across any of these recently.
I've actually received the email about a parcel. So, and one of my neighbours actually fell for it. They clicked on it and paid the money, and they then received a call to say, purporting to be from their bank, saying that, oh, this payment was fraud. Your account's been compromised. You need to transfer your funds into a new account we're going to set up for you. And the account details they were provided was in a completely different name. It wasn't even in their name, wasn't their name. And luckily she knew I worked for the bank and asked my advice, and I was like, don't do it. So while she lost the £3, I think it was, for the redelivery of a non-existent parcel, she didn't hand out any further information.
It's a good point. You see from the stories there, some of these scams are quite sophisticated. So absolutely anyone can fall for them, because they've got some of these fraudsters and scammers. They're very clever people who know how to build websites. They know how to build systems. They know how to make things look legitimate. So you've just got, but what people have said there with the stories, that's general rule. If there's any element of doubt, don't follow through, especially where money or sensitive personal information is involved. And these are just some of the others that are that exist as well. So there's vishing, which is the telephone equivalent of phishing. So that's when, just like we were saying, it's just the V is for voice, I believe. It's just when someone gets in touch on the phone trying to get you to divulge your information rather than on an email. We've got smishing, which is another equivalent of phishing, but this is the text equivalent, the SM being SMS, which is when someone sends a text and tries to get you to click on a link. So that would have been technically what my version of the post office scam was, because they sent me a text. There's malware, which describes malicious software. So that's software that can be sent to a computer to either damage, disrupt, or gain unauthorized access for someone else to your computer. So this can be when someone sends a virus or a worm or a Trojan horse. These are often sent in emails, and if you click a link, it lets them into the computer. And that's why it's important not to click links that look suspicious. And we've got some objectives there about learners being able to identify the main threats and what some of these scams will look like, and understand the practical ways you can spot these when they come up. And ransomware, which is, the clues in the name, it's a type of malware where they take over your computer and then they threaten you with not giving you access back to your computer until a sum of money is paid. So it was one of probably the first scams I was targeted as when I first had a laptop when I was younger, and a few months into it, somehow they bypassed my internet security. It was a security tool scam, it was called at the time. Don't know if it's still going, but they locked down the computer, wouldn't let you look, wouldn't let you into any of your documents, any of your files, onto the internet or anything. And it would just come up with a screen that would say, your computer is infected, but we can solve it if you pay a couple £100 or whatever it was to install this security software. This will wipe it. It wasn't real security software, it was just a type of ransomware. It was just scammers locking the computer and they're trying to get rid of it. Thankfully, it was solved, not by paying them, but by following some sound advice. But that's another type that can crop up. And it's always important that no actual company legitimate company would use them kind of tactics. It's not legal to lock someone's computer and force them to buy a product. And so we'll go to the next slide. So what we've got coming up now is a few case studies. So these are fictional scenarios, but they're based on things that have happened, to the real people in the real world. And we're going to go through them and just give some, real solid examples as to how some of these situations can play out. And then we're going to look at what could have been done to stop the scams and the frauds happening. So it's worth bearing in mind as we go through them, what signs of cyber threat could the individual have spotted? Which scenario poses the highest financial consequences to the individual? And what could the individual have done differently next time? You don't have to write any of these answers down or anything like that, but it's just something to bear in mind as we're looking at the scenarios. Yvette, should I do the first case study or would you like to?
That's fine, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So this is our first one. It's James. I'll read it all out word for word because some of the text is a bit small there. And it's James receives an unexpected call on his mobile. It shares his area code and his phone recognizes the number as potentially the name of his bank. Thinking it's his bank calling, he picks up. On the other end of the line, an automated voice tells him that his bank account has been compromised. To secure his account, he is told to call a given number urgently, as he risks losing all of his money that he won't get back. By calling the number instantly, the voice claims his bank can secure his account. Not wanting to lose his money and given the urgency, James calls the number given. The person on the other end asks for his personal details, including postcode, account number, card number, and its expiry date. In a panic, James provides all these details, and the person on the other end of the phone reassures him that he's done the right thing and his money is safe. The next day, when checking his account, James notices that the money in his account is almost entirely gone. He calls the known number of his bank, and they inform him that he's been a victim of a scam. So we've got the answers on the next slide, but just throwing it out to the room for a second. Does anyone recognize what type of cybercrime this is? As someone's rang James up, pretended to be his bank.
Was it the phishing?
That's a good one. Yeah, that's correct. It is phishing. And here we've got some of the things that James could do to reduce the risk of being a victim. So number one, never give out personal information over the phone. Number two is use a caller ID app. A good caller ID app can help boost your phone. So these are apps that are basically designed to detect on some level. They're not perfect, but they can sometimes detect where a call is coming from and just give you a bit more information as to where the call is. So if someone's pretending to be your bank, it might notice that it's not, and blocking capabilities. Never call a number given to you without cross-checking it with the company's official website. So that's one of the best things to do. It's what James did the next day, but it was too late. So if you get a suspicious call, you can hang up and then you can make the call yourself. But don't just call the number that they called you on. Go on the company website or look on the back of your bank card, or use a legitimate source that is definitely the number of your bank, and you call them up and then you can ask them. And the person on the end of the phone, you then know for sure it is from the bank, and then they can tell you if there is actually anything going on or not. And additionally, if once you've alerted your bank that someone might be targeting your account, they can also take extra steps to protect you if that's necessary. And we've got there some other common types of phishing and scenarios. So people pretending to be from HMRC, the former Inland Revenue, saying you've got overdue or unpaid taxes. Sometimes an old classic as well, prize or contest winnings, winning a holiday, and you need to just give them a few details before you can claim your prize. Fake computer tech support, those are people who ask to remotely access your computer to fix often a non-existent problem. And fake government agencies. So they like using government agencies, sometimes a court or a law enforcement agency or HMRC, or sometimes they'll make it up and just make something that sounds official. And they'll just insert word or say they're from a local police force or something like that.
And there was another recent one regarding calls saying that your national insurance number had been compromised, and if you didn't pay, there was some fine. Um, and what they do when with these phishing attempts, they really just want to scare you into acting. If you don't do it now, you're going to lose everything, and it's just, that is the really that's another trigger to tell you that something's not right. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next case study. I was just wondering how we're doing for time, Ellie.
Sorry, I was muted. It is 4:32, so we have 30 more minutes.
That's fine. This is quite a short one because I think we should really cover off the third one as well. I don't know if you agree, Malcolm, because of around the pension one, but this is just so in April, Shauna received an email from HMRC saying that she was eligible to receive a refund, and if you don't complete the refund form now, you'll not be able to claim your annual tax refund online. And the email had the right logos, the display name of the sender looked genuine, and the hyperlink that they clicked on looked genuine. But Shauna wasn't expecting a refund and she hadn't applied for one, and she was surprised by the urgency of the email. And she checked on the HMRC website and discovered that HMRC would never send a notification by email about tax refunds or rebates. And she discovered that it was a spoof and was lucky not to accidentally give her personal details away. And one of the other things to be aware of is things like with these kind of emails is they're not addressed to you personally. It will say like dear customer or dear taxpayer. And that's always a key that it's not genuine either. Because they would, if it's something important, it would be addressed to you personally. Historically, when fraud and scams sort of started, there would be really bad grammar and bad English and bad spelling, but they have become much more complicated and sophisticated. So that's why they're not always as easy to spot. So this one is an example of phishing and website spoofing, because obviously they've had the email and also the link was a spoof of a website, so it copied the characteristics of the HMRC website. So it's one of the things is, don't click on any any links. That's the key thing, is because that's how you can get malware added to your computer. So don't open any attachments and don't disclose any personal or payment information. HMRC, for example, on the refund side, generally in the past have always sent a check, and if not, they'll have your bank details and will pay in directly. So just always check the URL link before clicking on it. And cyber criminals are now so sophisticated that they can set up a spoof website address that is typed exactly the same as the real one, but they'll replace lowercase vowels with accented letters. So it's always best to type what you're looking for in the web address directly into your browser. And as you can see, they didn't know her name is missing. They asked her to click a link, and they want you to do it now. So there's that sense of urgency, that sense of that creating that fear factor. And Shauna reported the spoof email to a dedicated anti-fraud email address at HMRC, and most large organisations will have one of these. If you go onto the Barclays website, you'll find it there, and as will all other banks. So now we'll move on to our last case study of Kelly. Do you want to do this one, Malcolm, or?
I'm happy for you to go through a bit.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So Kelly was called out of the blue by an investment company claiming they could help her to release cash from her pension before she turned 55 in 4 years' time. Now, these kind of attempts are not just on really releasing your pension funds early. They can be for an existing pension that you're already in receipt of, if you look, trying to get you to take out a lump sum, or that's their purporting to offer. So it started out as a free pension review, so Kelly thought, why not? The result of the quick review told Kelly that she could take cash from her pension labelled as a savings advance. Kelly provided her details online, and her pension funds were transferred from her legitimate pension scheme into one set up by the new investor. Over the course of a few months, Kelly was loaned amounts of cash adding up to around half of her pension, with the company involved taking a fee each time, often as much as 30%. The fee was not often clear and didn't include the tax she will owe for accessing her pension early. After a year, the money remaining in the scheme after fees and tax were paid was invested in high-risk products until one day it was simply stolen outright, leaving her with no savings for herself or her wider family. So what type of cybercrime is this?
Hi, Yvette, it's Michael here. Is there some kind of social engineering in kind of tricking Kelly into doing things with her pension?
It is, yeah. So initially it's phishing because she had the call, and it was but it was an early pension release scam. So that was a bit of a trick one, because that's the one that was mentioned in the scene. So it's about it just says what she could have done. So if you get a cold call about your pension, the safest thing to do is just hang up. It's illegal and probably a scam. And you can report pension cold calls to the Information Commission officers, and there'll be a link to the website in this pack that I think Ellie will share with you later. And if you get offers via email, text, online, or online adverts, just ignore them. And be wary if you're contacted about any financial product or opportunity and they mention using your pension. And just remember, professional advice is not free. So a free out of the blue is probably a scam. And if ever you're considering doing anything with pensions, just bear in mind, always contact and get some advice on it. Not on a scam basis, but my daughter's father-in-law's neighbour, sorry, a bit complicated, retired and took a lump sum from his pension and ended up paying loads of tax because he got it in the same year that he retired, so he still had his income. So always, if ever you're thinking of doing anything with the pension, always contact, get professional advice and make sure that they're registered with the financial services, with the FCA, because only certain, not all financial advisors, they have to be registered to give permission and discuss pensions. And if you don't use an FCA authorised firm, you won't have access to the financial ombudsman scheme if things go wrong. But just always be wary if you're contacted out of the blue and pressured to invest quickly or promise returns that sound too good to be true. And if you intend to use the money in your pension to repay debts, you should contact a free debt advisor first to see what else you could do. And taking money from your pension early might help your immediate debts, but it's a very expensive way to free up money. So what we've got, there's some links to some videos on YouTube from Barclays and from CFAS about how much information is out there about you. And this is just some advice about things to do. So it's about thinking about changing your main passwords to more secure ones, and don't repeat or use new passwords across different accounts and platforms. And that, I know that can be difficult, but try to use different passwords for different things that you access. Check your privacy settings and see how much personal information is public, and particularly on social media accounts, including things like your birthday, your hometown, pet names, because pet names are quite often used for passwords. And think about installing some security software such as antivirus and two-factor authentication. And we've also got some top tips. So things like for passwords, when you're doing a password, try and make it at least 8 characters long and include a combination of upper or lowercase and numbers and special symbols. The only thing, and for a lot of fraud does take place abroad, and for European and outside of the UK keyboards generally do not include a pound sign on their keyboards. So that's not always the case, but it is a strong symbol to use. And always make sure that you download apps from official app stores and use a screen lock and a password or biometrics to use your screen. There's also things like using what they call two-factor authentication, and you may find now that when you are making purchases online, it takes you to the bank secure page, and that is now, or if you're transferring money to say, for example, a family member, it checks now the name of the person against the bank account name for security. It's not all banks, some of the newer fintech banks haven't signed up to this, but all the main high street banks have. So that can be an indication as well. So if they don't match, don't make the payment. And it's just about, never be embarrassed and concerned that you've been hacked, and then just make sure in your privacy settings, and so not approve access to additional permissions if you do quizzes on social media. And if you get friends requests on social media platforms from people you don't know, don't accept them. And sometimes, you can do use a search engine, just put yourself in and make sure there's nothing online you don't want hackers to know. And you'll see when the information is sent out, there's lots of links and things to help keep you safe.